Hey guys, this is Akshay,
And this is Dav.
and it is such a pleasure to introduce to all of you the first episode of our podcast.
Struggle well,
Well, I was gonna go a little sudden,
but I got the editing part. No?
well, before we get into the main video, we would like to take this time to talk about something really important.
So the thing is, guys, that yesterday we released our Hypothesis shop on our Instagram page.
Go check out our website, the link will be in the description.
Also, don't forget about the early bird sale, which says that 40% off for 72 hours on all the products just for you guys.
So go get your products as soon as possible at the lowest price. Now let's start the video.
So, guys, today we have a very special guest among us, an IBDP business teacher at Stanford International School, a personal high performance coach, and the founder of the Ivy League Challenge.
He has done masters from Harvard University in liberal arts, business administration, management, and extension studies. The man himself, Steve Gardner. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hello. Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yeah, Steve, we really truly appreciate you taking out your valuable time and spending some with us. We genuinely couldn't be much happier and excited to talk to you, and we hope you feel the same way as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity to just share what I know and hopefully we can help some of your listeners as well.
All right, Steve. So having our introductions over with, let's begin with our Q&A session. We hope you are ready.
Yeah, sure. Ready when you are.
All right, so let's begin. So, Steve, I believe I won't be wrong in saying that you weren't always interested in economics and business, right?
I suppose not.
Yeah, so well, I'm glad that our efforts into stalking you didn't really go into vain.
Well, jokes aside, we are super eager to know what led to this change in interest and how exactly you came to the conclusion that teaching, and that to economics and business specifically, is something that interests you.
Well, you know, I've been interested in economics ever since I was introduced to economics. Before I knew about it, or I suppose, I don't know, some of the first books that I read might have been about behavioral economics, and I thought that was fascinating. That led to, you know, deeper interest in economics. And so I studied business management at Harvard, and I took a lot of economics classes. Most of my, you know, the classes that I could choose that were not required, I chose economics classes. So, and business, I think is just, I think everyone wants to be in business, right?
True.
We all want to maybe not create a business. Certainly there's a space that's really valuable for people who want to make the world better by helping someone else's business be successful and being a part of a team. But I think that business is just the response to the reality of the world, right? That there are problems in the world, and that if we can solve those problems and make life better for people, then we can, that's what business does. It identifies problems and identifies innovative solutions to those problems. And so, you know, a lot of teachers are business leaders, even though they you know, their business is not the business model that brings in value to them, but hopefully they're solving problems in a classroom and improving the way that classrooms happen. And you'll even see teachers have created multiple platforms that are business oriented to help other teachers become successful. Mm-hmm. So there are platforms where teachers sell, you know, the things that they've prepared so that other teachers can do a better job teaching this content. Anyway, I think every single industry in medicine and engineering and teaching and everything, as long as that industry is focused on identifying and solving problems, then there's an element of business to it. So, you know, maybe I didn't always understand business that way, but I think all of us in that sense are interested in trying to solve problems and trying to make the world a little bit better for our communities.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
I have
definitely.
studied economics for some time, and it's like, if I'm not wrong with the terminology, nowadays the whole economy is changing into market economy. So like every single person, once they graduate, they have this thought that whatever they do, even if they are doing a job, after some time they have a startup or they are a part of a business, because that is something, people are really getting interested in. So definitely it's like most of the people do like business.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so moving on. So as we are all aware, and as we talked about, your interest in business, we know that Steve is the founder of the Ivy League Challenge, where he aims to provide students a helping hand towards reaching their dream colleges. Guys, do make sure you check out Steve's website, as it provides you a helping hand in getting accepted to the colleges of your dreams. The links to the website and his social media handles will be given in the description.
So Steve, like since you must have interacted with a lot of students and also get to know them like really closely, like what are your thoughts about students applying to college nowadays? Like are they facing too much stress of college admissions, and are they, or like simply they are following a stereotypical path without searching for their true talents or skills? Like what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, well, college admissions, I think, are wonderful. Well, first of all, I focus on the United States. So I know that college admissions in the UK and in many parts of the world are very different. But in the United States, where universities are looking for kind of a holistic approach to admissions, where it's not just test scores that determine who gets in and who doesn't, in that environment, look, I get it. I understand that many students, maybe even most students, are really stressed out about this, not just a little bit stressed out. If you look at just the average high school junior or senior, the last 2 years of school, and you look at their parents, these are overwhelmed, worn out, burnt out people, right? And whether they're highly ambitious and trying to pursue these top universities, or whether they're just trying to get into a decent school according to their definition, almost all of these students are burned out and they're overworked. Now, I don't blame the universities for this. I mean, universities could do a better job at clarifying what the path to a top university is, but at the same time, universities kind of are stuck in a way that they can't really clarify it, because so many students want to reverse engineer the admissions process. So that if Harvard or Yale came out and said, look, we just want you to be as authentically you as possible and do as much that is authentically aligned with your core values as you can possibly do, and start solving a problem within your sphere of influence to provide evidence that you care about the values that you say you care about, and make sure that your letters of recommendation confirm that you are who you say you are. Like all these things that, are kind of, for me, they're common sense. I've spent hundreds of hours talking to admissions officers and chatting with classmates at Harvard and at other top tier schools. But so those are the things that are going to get you into these top schools. Figure out your personal values, make decisions that align fully with those personal values. So eliminate all the other stuff. Stop trying to fit in, or stop trying to become the person that you think the university is looking for, and instead become as clear as possible about who you are and what you care about, what your values are, so that you can make decisions that are consistent with those values. And then once you're clear on that, start making your little community a better place. That making your community a better place is the evidence that you really do care about the things you say you care about. Okay, so that's the ticket to these top tier schools. Of course, you need top grades, you need good test scores, but
Yeah.
top grades and test scores are not enough. And trying to do everything and be Superman or Wonder Woman is also a terrible strategy, because admissions officers, whether they admit it or not, there's this irony in admissions where you need to be impressive, but you can't look like you're trying to be impressive. Does that make sense? It's like someone on Instagram that you look at the Instagram and you say, man, they're trying too hard, right? They've got these cool pictures, they're photoshopped really well, amazing filters, but they're just trying to look cool and they're trying a little bit too hard, and I'm just not that impressed. Well, admissions officers can approach it the same way. If they feel like you're trying to use a filter and Photoshop to make yourself impressive, or that you're just doing these activities because you think that is what they think will be impressive, that doesn't impress them. And that's a really quick ticket to the rejection pile. All right, so that strategy is very stressful. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, and it's not going to be successful. It's going to end in misery and drudgery. If instead you follow what I consider to be a far more effective path, and that is just what I've described. So the Ivy League Challenge, the online course that I teach, we go through with our students and we help you identify your core values. And then we help you understand how you can make decisions that are more aligned with those core values. We start you on what we call your impact project. That's you solving a problem in your sphere of influence that makes a difference, that provides the evidence for your values. This problem should be something that violates your core values. So the fact that this problem exists breaks your heart or it makes you angry, right? And if you can start solving an issue, making the world a little bit better right now in your sphere of influence, then you need to add to that some of the strategy. So we also teach that in the Ivy League Challenge. How do you link in your teachers who will write your letters of recommendation? And how do you make sure that they know the different depth of your impact project and how it is making a difference in your community? How do you tie in your admissions officer at your counselor, your college counselor at your high school? How do you reach out to business professionals so you can scale your impact? Or how do you reach out to college professors so that you can do research with college professors aligned with your impact project? All of those things and many, many more. There are lots and lots and lots of ways to make an impact and then to scale that impact. So we teach those strategies in the Ivy League Challenge. And my opinion, if that's what you're doing, yes, it's stressful to get good grades and prepare for top scores on your tests, but that stress is not too much. That's not overwhelming. And it's especially not overwhelming when more of your time and more of your energy is spent doing things that engage you, that really make you come alive because you're making a real difference in the real world in an area that is aligned with your core values. What you discover if you go to Harvard, or I haven't attended other Ivy League schools, but I have many friends from Dartmouth and Princeton and Yale. And as I talk to these friends, Columbia, Stanford, et cetera, as I talk to these friends, they agree with me. And my point is this: look, the best way to get into Harvard is to not need Harvard, right? If you are doing such amazing work right now that you do not need Harvard University to be successful, you do not need Harvard University to make you feel like you are on the right track and you are the best version of yourself that you could possibly be, then that puts you in the running for someone that Harvard might want on their campus. Yeah. If you need Harvard to be successful, if your success plan hinges on getting into your dream school, then why does your dream school want you? You don't get into the premier cricket league or rugby league in India because you want to become a great cricket player or a great rugby player, right? You get in, you're recruited in because you're already amazing. And so you don't become amazing by trying to copy other amazing people. You become amazing in college admissions perspective by becoming as authentically you as possible. And that system is not as overwhelming. That system is actually life-giving. And you may decide, like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or many other examples, that, yeah, Harvard wanted you, but you've got more important things to do. And these people dropped out of Harvard because they didn't go to Harvard because they needed Harvard to be successful, obviously. They dropped out because they couldn't waste their time at Harvard. They had more important things to do. Yeah. And so you want to get to the point where in your mind, you truly believe that Berkeley or Duke or Stanford or whatever school you're applying to and you hope to go to, that school will be lucky to have you. And it's up to you to decide how you're going to create your success. And if Duke comes along for the ride, they are so lucky, because when you leave Duke, you're going to make a huge impact in the world. And Duke is going to get that honor and glory. And they're going to advertise, look at this amazing student that came to our school. That's going to be you, right? That has to be your mindset as a high school student. That's where you put yourself in a position to be recruited to these top schools.
Definitely, that desperation basically doesn't have to be in us, that we are desperate to go somewhere. It should be more in the university that they are desperate to have us, because then only like we are creating impact. Well, I had another question. So it's basically this thing, the main stress which comes, is by seeing a lot of people who are doing something. So basically, as international students, we both are international students, things are different at our place. Like in US, they are still more aware of it, that what our college admission process and everything. For us, it's like till the time we get aware of what is the admission process or what we need to do, we only have the time left of maybe just giving the exams or maybe just getting top scores. And maybe we don't get that time of finding our own self because we never bothered doing that. We were just busy in doing school academics and thought that that is something great.
Yep.
So like, what advice would you have for our international students, maybe who are from India or other countries from Asia or maybe from the UK?
Yeah, well, I'm very familiar with that situation. I spent many years in China, and same situation. Students that, parents believe your job is to study, and nothing else. Well, it's tough to find your core values and then make an impact in your community in that environment. And so I totally get it. Look, if you are discovering now that you want to apply to one of these top schools, but you don't have this runway, right? You don't have the time in front of you to go and find yourself and then make better decisions and cut out activities that do not align with your core values, and then start an impact project, and then scale an impact project, and then strategically tie in all the pieces to make your application perfect. If you don't have time, I would say you need to remember a couple of things. Now, I go into a lot more detail on my podcast, and my podcast is totally free. My online course is not, but the podcast is totally free, and your listeners are welcome to, it's the Ivy League Prep Academy podcast. And there's going to be a lot more detail there, because I can't answer in nearly as much detail as I would like in the limited time that we have together today. But think about it this way. So I did a podcast about what actually happens in the room when admissions decisions are made. And I described that entire process. That's very valuable to learn. Listen to that. I did another one that talks about the change in the map, the way that the map to elite admissions has changed. That'd be a very valuable podcast to listen to. Another one about how it's not the most qualified student who gets admitted to these top schools. And how could it possibly be, right? These schools have more valedictorians applying to them than they have spots. And very few of these valedictorians are getting in. So how do schools choose the most qualified student? They don't. Huge, important idea. So it's not the most qualified student who gets in. Instead, it is the most memorable. So when you create your application and you only have 3 months before you need to submit your application, or 3 weeks. So you don't have time to create an impact project. First of all, if you have 3 months, then you do have time. You have time, you should do something. I have success stories in the Ivy League Challenge that came to me with absolutely no hope of getting into their dream schools. And this was at the end of their junior year. So they only had the summer between junior year and senior year. And sometimes these are IB students. So that summer for IB students, you're doing your extended essay, you're doing your internal assessments. I mean, that's a very, very, very busy summer. And I've even had IB students fit in an impact project during the summer. When it aligns with your values, it doesn't drain you like all these other activities do. It feeds you energy. Okay, so if you have 3 months, you have plenty of time. Not as much as you wish you had. You'd rather have 3 years. But if you have 3 months, you should do an impact project. You should do that. If you only have 3 weeks or 3 days, then you need to look at your application, look at your essays, And everything needs to align with a very, very clear and memorable theme. All right, so again, way more detail in the podcast, even more detail on my Instagram around this, but you should pick keywords that highlight who you are, so you can describe who you are in 5 words or less. What makes you special in 5 words or less? Somehow pare it all down. That's the key of who you are, and all of your essays and the way that you describe your activities and the way you describe yourself and how you ask recommendation letter writers to talk about you, all of that should be reinforcing these 3 to 5 keywords that describe you at your best, okay? So your theme should come out so that when the admissions officer reads your application, they're not confused about who you are. They're not saying, oh, why do you say you want to study history, but then you were part of the business club and you did this thing for, I don't know, for medical, you volunteered at a hospital, and it just doesn't, nothing makes sense. It looks like you want to do history and business and pre-med, and you want to sneak into some other programs as well. You don't want to confuse your admissions officer. Make it as clear as possible. This is who I am. This is what I've done. This is what I want to do with the resources that are available at your school. And all of this makes sense because my message, my application is very, very clear. It's very clear. It's very memorable.
Okay, so for the third question, I would want to ask this, that, you know, maybe you answered the half of it, but like there are a lot of students who have this perfect application. Like maybe they have this perfect application, or they just call it that perfect application, and like more than perfect, it's like they do have the grades, they do have you know, the SAT scores, then they were also a part of some or the other organization, but still they many a times do get rejected. So like any reason for that, or like is it just kind of a random thing?
Yeah, I mean, we've already talked about that, right? So President Faust at Harvard University, President Faust said that Harvard could fill their incoming freshman class twice over with just valedictorians. Valedictorians are the #1 student at a high school, but there are thousands of high schools, right? And of those thousands of high schools, it appears that at least 4,000 or so of these valedictorians apply to Harvard. Well, they only have 1,900 spots. So even if only valedictorians were admitted to Harvard, then more than 50% of the valedictorians who applied would be rejected. But they don't. They only accept a small fraction of those. Of the 1,900 students who are admitted to the freshman class each year at Harvard, very few of them are valedictorians, right? So it's not about becoming the person that you think your school is looking for. Don't do that. Even personal values that you think are maybe not as academic can be the reason why you get in. There's a fairly famous example of someone who was admitted to UPenn, and the value that stood out to their admissions officer was their kindness. And the admissions officer explicitly said in her letter to this student, we've admitted you in large part because of this impressive letter of recommendation that your janitor sent in on your behalf, right? The school janitor who talked about how kind you are and how you help with cleanup efforts and all kinds of things. We've never seen a letter of recommendation from a janitor before. We were so impressed with your level of kindness that we just needed to check to make sure your grades did not disqualify you. And they check, and her grades aren't great, but they're good enough that she should be fine in school, but they really want her because she's such a kind, such an amazing person. And she lives her value of kindness so fully in her life. And there's evidence of this. We want her on our campus, and they admit her, even though she's not the perfect application, right? So it goes
Yeah.
back to what we've already described. Schools aren't looking for 2,000 clones of the same kind of person. They're looking for a very rich, diverse class. And so how do you show that you belong in that rich, diverse class? You show with clarity who you are, what your values are, how you live those values, and then they can decide, do we want that person to be one of the 2,000 people who fill our incoming class?
Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah,
like the
true.
uniqueness, the authenticity, that's what matters. So like that's really helpful.
Yeah, like
You
that's
have to
really,
be consistently authentic, right? You need to show consistently through your actions, through the activities you take on, through letters of recommendation, et cetera, et cetera. You show consistency in your values. And that's what the beauty of the Impact Project is. You prove that you have these values because this is how you spend your spare time. When you have an extra hour, you spend it making this difference in your community.
yeah, true. Like it's just like it is really eye-opening and very informative. So thank you so much, Steve, for answering that. So, all right, like since you're a Harvard graduate and like not to show off, like although we want to, it's not like let's know about the Harvard experience and how it's different from other universities. Like how exactly, like what exactly is that one particular thing which makes Howard different from others?
Well, I've only attended 3 universities. Harvard is special. I really, really love my time at Harvard. I believe I grew as a person. I believe that it nurtured me and encouraged me. I believe that I was surrounded by some of the most amazing people in the world. What is it that's so great about Harvard? I can't pick one thing. They're very supportive, very, very helpful, brilliant minds everywhere. Everyone is doing amazing things, right? No one is at so many, like at your high school right now, if you're listening to this, I don't know how many people you have that might be listening to this, but if someone's listening in, most likely, if you look around in your high school, you're going to find that most people are trying to fit in. Very, very few people at Harvard are trying to fit in. They're just not. That was so boring so long ago. And these are the people that were not trying to fit in when they were in middle school or high school either. That's why they figured out their core values so clearly. That's why they were able to make decisions that were consistent with those core values, even as a teenager. They just didn't care about trying to fit in. And so you surround yourself with people who care about their core values and make choices consistent with those. Then they start doing amazing things with it. And then they start working harder and harder to get better at that. And pretty soon you have, world-class, world quality people. And then you fill an entire campus with thousands of these people. And then you bring in the minds that, I mean, there were times, I'm not joking, there were times when I was in an economics class, for example, talking about some theory or talking about, what the author of this theory was thinking when they said this. And the professor has said, well, let's go ask him. He's just down the hall, right? The author of this theory that has formed an entire branch of economics, he's here. Let's go talk to him. Let's find out. Let's invite him into the classroom right now. See if he's got 5 minutes to share why he said the things that he said and what he meant by that. Anyway, that sort of thing is common. It's not even the exception at Harvard. I remember after one of my classes, a leadership class, and the professor was so inspiring and so just so wise in his advice. This was our last class of the semester, and we'd all finished our projects, and everyone, had this breath of fresh air. And he shared the duty and the burden that we hold as Harvard students, that we need to go out and sincerely make the world a better place. And he just shared this, for 15 minutes, he talked about how important this is. And I kid you not, you look around the room and there were classmates crying. Everyone was touched. And when he finished, we stood up and gave him a standing ovation. I'd never experienced that before in any school. and yet I've heard about it at other classes as well. To finish a class so inspired that you spontaneously give the professor a standing ovation, it's remarkable. It's remarkable.
Yeah,
and so,
definitely.
by the way, that professor, John Paul Rowland, I invited him onto my podcast, and he graciously accepted it. So there are 2 interviews that I have of him on the Ivy League Prep Academy podcast. You can listen to for yourself. It's just inspiring. And there are so many professors and fellows and teaching fellows and peers that are so inspiring in so many different ways. It's beautiful. I highly, if any of you have ambitions to go to Harvard or to go to a top tier school, I really encourage it. I think it's an amazing, amazing, amazing opportunity, and you won't regret it if you go.
Yeah, like wow, like hearing all of this only makes us like more enthusiastic about going to Harvard. Fingers crossed. So yeah, like Steve, before we end our conversation, which we don't want to, like we would ask you this one last question.
Yeah.
We would love to get a piece of advice for all the Harvard as well as all the Ivy League aspirants, like who are applying from an international perspective, like from abroad countries, not from the United States. Like, what is that one piece of advice that you would like to give them?
You know, it begins with courage. Can I steal 2 pieces of advice? It all begins with courage. So this choice to pursue an elite university takes courage. You risk people saying, "Didn't you say you were going to try to go to Yale? And what happened? Oh, you went somewhere else instead. You couldn't get in." You risk that when you have ambitions to go to a top school. You risk, it requires courage to choose not to try and fit in. It requires courage to try to identify your core values. It's hard work. In fact, I mean, we spend a lot of time in the Ivy League Challenge helping students figure out what their core values are, because you've spent your entire, school experience hearing from teachers what is important. And very, very seldomly do you have any opportunity to choose what's valuable to you, and for that to mean anything to the teacher or to the school or anything else. So most high school students have no idea what their core values are, and I don't blame them. That takes a lot of work, and that takes a lot of courage to try to do that self-discovery, that introspection, that emotional intelligence work to gain that level of self-efficacy and that level of self-awareness, so that you know what your core values are. So the first thing is, it starts with courage, and you just have to choose to be courageous. You just have to choose to be willing to take risks, be willing to fail. The second thing that I would say is one of the most important choices you make, and you continue making all the time, is who you surround yourself with. Who are your friends? Who do you spend time with? Who do you spend time talking to and sharing your dreams with and sharing your ideas with? Those people are going to have an outsized influence on you. And so if one of the reasons why I created the Ivy League Challenge is to create a community of people from around the world. And the vast majority of, a lot of the people in the Ivy League Challenge course are international students, but there are students from around the world who can then get to know each other and can support each other. And these are all ambitious people, and finding that group of people to support you is really important. If you can't participate in something like the Ivy League Challenge, and you are not surrounded by peers that you want to learn from and that you want to work together with to reach, amazing, ambitious results, then who do you spend time reading? What books do you read? How do you spend your energy? Because if you are spending your time on social media and on Netflix or Google Plus or whatever, I don't even know what streaming services you use in India, but if you're spending your time watching YouTube and social media and streaming television or movies or game shows, then that's going to have a huge impact on the way that you think and the courage that you have. And you're going to want to fit in just like everyone else. if instead you surround yourself with people who have these ambitious thoughts and these ambitious dreams, or you read about people who did amazing things, or you read the advice of people who are doing amazing things, then your mindset can shift and you can choose courage and you can choose to do things that otherwise you probably wouldn't choose for yourself.
Yeah, that is so amazing. Like those two tips, like I am definitely gonna remember them, and I would advise all the audience to like just either note it down or come back to the video lesson, because these are two really important things. So I hope everyone in our audience, the young aspirers hoping to make their mark and achieve the hard task of getting into an IBD, gets inspired after hearing Steve's holy words.
Anyway, Steve, it was such a huge pleasure to host you in our first ever podcast.
Yeah, it was my pleasure to be able to join you. I'm glad we could make this happen. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you once again, and like we hope that we have been good hosts for you and that you had a good time with us. So like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me on, and it's been wonderful sharing my thoughts with your audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for your valuable time, Steve. Hope to remain in contact.
Of course.